By the spring of 1940, Europe was in turmoil. Germany's Blitzkrieg, a terrifying combination of speed, coordination, and firepower, had overrun Poland, Denmark, Norway, Belgium, and France with astonishing efficiency. The panzer divisions moved like lightning across open terrain, crushing everything in their path. The Allies, still reeling from the fall of France, faced the grim prospect of a German invasion across the English Channel. Britain, despite its naval supremacy, lacked modern equipment to counter the armored threat. It was a desperate time, and improvisation became a necessity. Amid this looming crisis, Britain turned to its stopgap weapons, hastily produced, often improvised, and sometimes regarded as outdated. One of these was a small but remarkable anti-tank gun, designed to fill the gap while more advanced artillery was in development. Though modest in size, it would soon prove that courage, ingenuity, and precision could amplify even the simplest weapon into a hero of the battlefield. This gun would become a symbol of resistance, a tool that helped Britain withstand Blitzkrieg when victory seemed improbable. The gun in question had humble beginnings. Its design was initially conceived in the late 1930s, at a time when military planners underestimated the speed and armor of modern tanks. The British Army had primarily relied on machine guns, light field artillery, and early cruiser tanks for anti-armor defense. But the rapid advance of German Panzer divisions exposed the inadequacies of these weapons. Armor-piercing capabilities were insufficient, rate of fire was too slow, and mobility was limited. Military engineers responded by adapting existing designs, refining them for anti-tank purposes, and producing them quickly in factories across Britain. This stopgap gun, while not revolutionary in design, embodied practicality and accessibility. It was small enough to be transporting easily, maneuverable enough to be deployed in varied terrain, and robust enough to withstand harsh combat conditions. Its caliber allowed it to penetrate the armor of early Panzer models at reasonable ranges, giving British infantry a fighting chance against an enemy who had dominated Europe through speed and surprise. Every feature was carefully considered: weight, recoil management, ammunition types, and simplicity of operation. For the crews tasked with wielding it, reliability and effectiveness mattered more than sophistication. The production of these guns was a race against time. Britain's factories worked tirelessly, often under the threat of German air raids, to produce as many weapons as possible. Skilled craftsmen, engineers, and assembly workers pushed the limits of available technology and resources. The goal was simple: equip every potential defensive line with a weapon capable of stopping a panzer column. The scale of urgency cannot be overstated. Every week, every barrel, and every crew trained mattered, because the German threat was advancing relentlessly across the continent. Crews assigned to operate these guns were often volunteers, reservists, or hastily trained soldiers. They underwent intensive drills to understand targeting, camouflage, and rapid deployment. The gun required precision, as one poorly aimed shot could mean the difference between survival and destruction. Soldiers learned to operate in pairs, teams, or small units, ensuring that each weapon could be deployed quickly, fired accurately, and relocated as the battle evolved. This coordination was crucial, particularly when facing the fast-moving blitzkrieg tactics that relied on overwhelming speed and coordination. One of the earliest tests of the stopgap gun's effectiveness came during the tense months leading up to Dunkirk. As German forces swept through northern France and Belgium, British units found themselves on the defensive. The gun, though modest in size, was deployed along key approaches, road junctions, and choke points. Its crews dug in, camouflaged positions, and waited for the advancing tanks. The contrast between the overwhelming German armor and the small British gun could not have been more stark. Yet it was here that the weapon began to earn its reputation. Accounts from the front lines describe moments of extraordinary impact. A single gun, properly positioned and operated with precision, could disable a Panzer IV or a light German reconnaissance tank with one well-placed shot. The psychological effect was immediate. German tank crews, accustomed to near-total dominance over European opponents, found themselves halted by a modest, seemingly inconspicuous piece of artillery. The Blitzkrieg, which had relied on speed and the impression of invincibility, was slowed. The stopgap gun was proving that tactical acumen, courage, and engineering could counter technological superiority. The crews themselves became heroes in their own right, operating under constant threat from artillery, aircraft, and advancing tanks required nerves of steel. Soldiers recount instances of loading and firing under fire, digging in after each shot, and coordinating with infantry to maximize the gun's defensive potential. In many ways, the human element was as critical as the weapon itself. The gun provided capability, but it was the soldiers' ingenuity, discipline, and courage that transformed it into a battlefield game-changer. Beyond the battlefield, the stopgap guns symbolized Britain's resilience. While much of Europe had fallen to the German war machine, the British people were determined not to be defeated. Factories churned out ammunition, training camps drilled new recruits, and the military leadership adapted rapidly to the realities of modern mechanized warfare. This small gun, unassuming yet effective, became a rallying point, a tangible representation of Britain's determination to resist, improvise, and fight back. Technically, the gun was designed with efficiency in mind. Its caliber allowed sufficient penetration for the tanks of 1940, and its recoil system enabled rapid follow-up shots. Mobility was achieved through a lightweight carriage, allowing crews to reposition under fire or ambush enemy armor from multiple angles. Ammunition was standardized and easy to transport, ensuring that supply lines could keep up with defensive deployments. These seemingly small advantages compounded in practice, enabling British forces to create defensive networks that could delay or disrupt German armored advances. The gun's operational history during the early stages of World War II illustrates both its impact and its limitations. In engagements around coastal defenses and critical roadways, it consistently proved capable of halting panzer columns for crucial periods, buying time for reinforcements and evacuations. However, crews had to be mindful of the gun's limitations. It struggled against heavily armored late-model tanks, required careful concealment to avoid counter-battery fire, and depended on precise teamwork. Despite these challenges, it remained a key element in Britain's defensive strategy, particularly during the desperate months of 1940. One of the most famous deployments occurred during the Dunkirk evacuation. As British and French troops retreated toward the beaches, these stopgap guns provided critical support. They were deployed along narrow roads, hedgerows, and makeshift defensive positions to hold off German armor long enough for soldiers to board evacuation vessels. Accounts from veterans highlight moments of intense action. Single guns firing repeatedly at approaching panzers, crews working under machine gun and artillery fire, and small teams improvising with limited resources to maximize effect. In these moments, the gun's role went beyond technical specifications. It became a symbol of hope, resistance, and ingenuity. The psychological impact on the German forces was equally significant. Blitzkrieg had relied on speed, shock, and the assumption that Allied defenses would crumble under the weight of armored superiority. Encountering effective anti-tank fire from what seemed like rudimentary artillery forced German units to adapt, slow their advance, and reassess tactics. In essence, the stopgap gun disrupted the rhythm of Blitzkrieg. It may not have been able to destroy every tank it faced, but it could delay, damage, and demoralize. In warfare, even small disruptions in tempo can have monumental consequences. At the strategic level, the gun bought Britain invaluable time. While the nation's industrial base was ramping up production of more advanced anti-tank weapons, the stopgap gun served as a bridge, providing immediate defensive capability. Planners could reinforce critical areas, train new units, and prepare for larger-scale operations. In retrospect, the gun's significance is clear. It may not have been the ultimate solution to German armored supremacy, but it was the weapon that allowed Britain to survive, regroup, and fight another day. The Stopgap hero's story is also a tale of adaptation. Crews often modified positions, reinforced fortifications, and experimented with firing techniques to increase effectiveness. Camouflage was perfected to conceal guns from aerial reconnaissance, while firing angles were adjusted to exploit the vulnerabilities of German tank armor. This ingenuity, combined with training and determination, amplified the gun's effectiveness far beyond what its designers initially envisioned. In many ways, it was a triumph of human initiative over mechanical limitation. In conclusion, the stopgap gun was more than a temporary solution. It was Britain's answer to Blitzkrieg, a weapon that bridged the gap between urgency and preparedness, improvisation and innovation. Its success lay in the combination of practical engineering, rapid deployment, and the skill of the men who operated it. In the desperate early months of War World II, when victory seemed distant and defeat imminent, this unassuming weapon emerged as a hero, proving that even modest tools, when used wisely and courageously, can alter the course of history. As 1940 progressed, the stopgap gun began to prove itself under fire. Early deployments across southern England and the remaining French front lines highlighted both its potential and the ingenuity of the crews operating it. For many soldiers, it was their first encounter with mechanized warfare at close range, and the contrast between a modest gun and the monstrous German Panzers was stark. Yet in these engagements, precision, preparation, and determination turned what might have been a symbolic gesture into a tangible deterrent against Blitzkrieg tactics. In the chaotic retreat toward Dunkirk, the gun's crews demonstrated remarkable adaptability. British forces were under constant pressure from rapidly advancing German armor, and every defensive position was vital. Teams dug the guns into hedgerows, narrow streets, and fortified roadblocks. Each emplacement was chosen carefully to maximize firing angles and exploit the vulnerabilities of German tanks. Crews coordinated with infantry units, machine guns, and artillery, creating layered defenses that forced panzer divisions to slow their advance or risk catastrophic losses. In these moments, the small gun became a linchpin of survival. One of the most extraordinary aspects of the stopgap gun was its psychological impact. German tank crews, accustomed to dominating European battlefields, were unprepared for determined resistance from what they initially considered a minor threat. Reports from panzer officers describe confusion and surprise when a seemingly small artillery piece destroyed or immobilized a tank at ranges that should have been safe. The gun's presence forced German commanders to rethink tactics, approach more cautiously, and coordinate with infantry and artillery support more deliberately. It disrupted the tempo of Blitzkrieg, which relied on rapid, decisive movement. Crews operating the gun quickly became adept at maximizing its advantages. Training emphasized rapid deployment, concealed positions, and coordinated firing with spotters. In forests, fields, and urban environments, the gun could be hidden until the enemy was within optimal range. Soldiers learned to use natural terrain to channel enemy armor into kill zones. Even when the gun could not destroy heavily armored Panzer IVs or later variants, its presence slowed advances, inflicted damage, and bought critical time for troop movements. The combination of engineering simplicity and tactical innovation amplified its battlefield impact far beyond its modest specifications. Stories from the front illustrate how ordinary soldiers became heroes through this weapon. In one engagement near a French village, a two-man crew held off an entire company of German tanks long enough for retreating British units to escape. By carefully choosing firing positions and using concealment effectively, they were able to strike repeatedly, forcing the enemy to withdraw. Accounts from survivors recall the tension, adrenaline, and ingenuity required to maintain effectiveness under fire. The gun itself became a force multiplier, its power magnified by the skill and courage of the crews operating it. Beyond Dunkirk, the gun played a crucial role in fortifying Britain's defences against the possibility of invasion. As the Battle of Britain raged in the skies, ground forces prepared for Operation Sea Lion, Germany's planned invasion of the British Isles. Coastal defences, roadblocks, and strategically placed anti-tank guns were integrated into a network designed to slow, damage, and repel armoured forces. The stopgap gun, though smaller than the artillery that would follow in later years, was central to these plans. Crews trained relentlessly, rehearsing rapid repositioning, target acquisition, and coordination with infantry and observation posts. The gun's operational limitations were apparent but manageable. Heavier German tanks eventually surpassed its penetration capability, and mobility across rough terrain was challenging. Ammunition supply could be precarious under sustained fire, and mechanical reliability required constant maintenance. Nevertheless, crews adapted by emphasizing ambush tactics, terrain selection, and coordination with supporting forces. The combination of human ingenuity and tactical application allowed the gun to remain effective despite technological gaps. The psychological effect on British troops was profound. Knowing that a small gun could neutralize enemy tanks provided a sense of empowerment and confidence. Infantry units, often outnumbered and outgunned, relied on these emplaced weapons to anchor defensive positions. Stories from training camps emphasize how soldiers internalized the gun's capabilities, learning to anticipate panzer approaches, coordinate firing zones, and integrate anti-tank tactics into broader defensive strategy. The weapon became a symbol of resistance, a tangible representation of Britain's resolve. German intelligence also took note of the stopgap gun's effectiveness. Reports indicate that early encounters with British anti-tank positions influenced planning for subsequent operations, forcing adjustments in advance routes, armoured formations, and the coordination of combined arms. Even a modest weapon, when skillfully employed, could shape enemy strategy. The gun's influence was not solely in the destruction it inflicted, but in the operational caution it forced upon one of the most formidable armies in history. In North Africa, the gun's role was similarly significant. British forces, facing German and Italian armoured units, relied on stopgap anti-tank weapons to supplement existing artillery. Crews adapted to desert conditions, learning to compensate for sand, heat, and shifting terrain. Despite these challenges, the gun contributed to delaying enemy advances, protecting supply lines, and supporting infantry operations. Its versatility was evident. In open terrain, it engaged enemy armor at maximum range, while in defensive positions, it functioned as part of integrated fire networks. The human stories continue to define the weapon's legacy. Soldiers recounted harrowing experiences of firing under bombardment, repositioning rapidly to avoid counterfire, and improvising repairs in the field. Crews became resourceful, using the gun to maximum effect in creative ways. In one account, a unit repurposed field obstacles to channel German tanks into narrow lanes, allowing a single gun to achieve repeated hits. These acts of ingenuity highlight the interplay between technology and human skill. The gun was effective not merely because of its design, but because of the people who wielded it under extreme pressure. The gun's presence also shaped broader tactical doctrine. British commanders emphasized layered defense, using small anti-tank teams to create overlapping zones of fire. Reconnaissance and observation posts guided crews to engage enemy armor at optimal ranges. Infantry integration was critical, with soldiers prepared to support or protect gun positions from flanking attacks. The combination of small-caliber artillery, disciplined crews, and well-planned defensive networks proved remarkably effective in countering the Blitzkrieg's speed and coordination. One particularly illustrative engagement occurred during a German probe along the southern coast. A single gun, hidden along a hedgerow, engaged a column of Panzer IIIs and IVs advancing toward a village. Through careful aiming, precise timing, and the element of surprise, the crew was able to destroy or disable multiple vehicles, delaying the enemy advance long enough for reinforcements to establish positions. The encounter highlighted both the gun's strengths and the ingenuity required of its operators. Even a modest weapon could have an outsized impact when employed with skill, discipline, and tactical foresight. The stopgap gun's impact extended beyond immediate battlefield outcomes. It bought Britain precious time to develop more advanced anti-tank weapons, such as the 6-pounder and later 17-pounder guns, while providing a bridge between obsolete designs and modern artillery. Its operational effectiveness demonstrated that even in the absence of technological superiority, human innovation, courage, and preparation could level the playing field against a mechanized army. Psychologically, the gun reinforced British morale. Civilians, soldiers, and leaders alike recognized that their nation had a tool capable of resisting German armored supremacy, even if only temporarily. The stories of heroic crews and successful engagements became part of the collective narrative of resilience during the early years of War II. This symbolism, coupled with tangible tactical success, transformed a small stopgap weapon into a legend of defense. The gun's design simplicity also ensured that it could be manufactured and deployed rapidly. Factories adapted production lines to churn out units as quickly as possible, while training programs emphasized speed of operation, concealment, and precision. Logistics teams learned to transport and supply these guns under wartime constraints, often improvising with limited resources. The effectiveness of these operational adaptations highlighted the interplay between human ingenuity, industrial capacity, and tactical planning, a triad that would define Britain's early war resilience. By the end of 1940, the stopgap gun had proven its worth repeatedly. In defensive actions across Britain and the remaining theatres of European conflict, it had engaged and damaged German tanks, delayed advances, and forced the enemy to adjust tactics. Its crews had become highly skilled, often improvising under fire and demonstrating remarkable resilience. More than a weapon, it had become a symbol of ingenuity, courage, and determination, a tangible representation of Britain's refusal to be overwhelmed by Blitzkrieg. The gun's operational record also provided lessons for future British anti-tank development. Engineers studied the limitations encountered in field conditions, noting areas for improvement in penetration, mobility, and durability. Crews provided feedback on ergonomics, rate of fire, and ammunition handling. These insights directly influenced subsequent designs, ensuring that future generations of British anti-tank artillery would be more effective, reliable, and adaptable. In sum, the stopgap gun's early combat performance established a legacy that extended far beyond its immediate tactical role. It disrupted Blitzkrieg, instilled confidence among British forces, and forced German commanders to rethink assumptions about armored dominance. More importantly, it demonstrated that courage, ingenuity, and careful application of available technology could offset seemingly insurmountable odds. The gun's story is one of adaptation, resilience, and the transformative power of skillful human action in the face of overwhelming mechanized might. By late 1940 and into 1941, the stopgap gun had evolved from a desperate expedient into a cornerstone of Britain's defensive strategy. Its initial deployments along the French front lines in hastily dug positions around Dunkirk and across the southern coast of England had demonstrated its surprising effectiveness against the German Panzer divisions. While modest in size and design, the gun's ability to halt, delay, and disrupt armored advances made it a hero of early War II, a symbol of ingenuity and courage in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. One of the gun's most significant contributions was its role in shaping tactical doctrine. Commanders realized that, though it could not match the firepower of larger artillery or heavy tanks, its mobility and penetration capability allowed it to be employed creatively. Defensive networks were established where small teams of these guns could create kill zones, supported by infantry, machine guns, and field obstacles. By funneling advancing German armor into predetermined paths, crews maximized each gun's potential, turning a single weapon into a force multiplier. The human element was central to this success. Crews operating the gun were often volunteers, hastily trained, yet highly motivated. They endured long hours in trenches, under bombardment, and in adverse weather, maintaining their weapons, calculating ranges, and coordinating with supporting forces. Their courage under fire turned what might have been a minor weapon into a decisive factor on the battlefield. Veteran accounts describe moments of sheer tension, holding fire until the enemy was perfectly aligned, striking multiple targets in rapid succession, and relocating under fire to avoid counterattacks. In these moments, the modest gun transcended its mechanical limitations. The gun's impact extended beyond direct engagements. Its presence altered enemy behavior. German tank commanders, accustomed to near-total dominance, had to approach British defensive positions with caution, often slowing their advance and coordinating with infantry or artillery to suppress potential ambushes. Blitzkrieg, which relied on speed and shock, was disrupted. Even when the gun could not destroy enemy armor outright, it inflicted psychological stress, forced tactical adjustments, and bought critical time for British forces to regroup, reinforce, and prepare for counterattacks. North Africa provided another proving ground for the gun's versatility. British forces, facing the German Afrika Korps and Italian armored units, deployed it across desert terrain, protecting supply lines, defensive positions, and critical choke points. Crews adapted to harsh conditions, learning to compensate for heat, sand, and shifting terrain while maintaining accuracy and operational readiness. The gun's ability to penetrate early panzer armor at range allowed smaller British forces to contest territory and slow the enemy's advance, demonstrating that ingenuity and determination could offset numerical or technological disadvantages. The Battle of Gazala and subsequent engagements highlight the gun's operational significance. In these clashes, British crews employed ambush tactics, coordinated firing, and terrain exploitation to damage or disable enemy tanks. Accounts from soldiers detail the tension of waiting for the optimal firing moment, the thrill of a well-placed round, and the rapid decision-making required to survive against mechanized opponents. In many ways, these actions mirrored the spirit of early British resistance: resourcefulness, courage, and tactical intelligence, transforming a modest weapon into a decisive factor. The psychological effect on Allied and enemy forces alike was profound. British troops drew confidence from knowing that their defensive positions included effective anti-tank measures. Infantry units, often outnumbered and outgunned, could anchor positions around these guns, coordinating with other assets to maximize defensive impact. German commanders, on the other hand, encountered a level of resistance they had not anticipated. Reports describe moments of hesitation and reassessment, acknowledging that even a small gun could disrupt entire panzer formations. In warfare, perception and psychology can be as decisive as firepower. The stopgap gun excelled in both domains. The operational success of the gun also shaped future British anti-tank development. Engineers studied its effectiveness and limitations, incorporating lessons learned into designs like the 6-pounder and 17-pounder guns. Improvements in penetration, mobility, and crew ergonomics were informed by frontline experience, ensuring that future weapons would be more capable against evolving German armor. The stopgap gun thus bridged the gap between urgent defensive needs and the development of more advanced artillery, highlighting the importance of iterative design and feedback from combat experience. Despite technological limitations, the gun's strategic importance was undeniable. It allowed Britain to maintain defensive cohesion during critical early war months, preventing German forces from achieving complete dominance over key regions. It also served as a rallying point for morale, both among soldiers and the civilian population. Stories of heroic crews, successful ambushes, and determined resistance became part of the national narrative, reinforcing the perception that Britain could withstand Blitzkrieg. Human ingenuity often magnified the gun's effectiveness. Crews improvised camouflage, repositioned guns rapidly, and coordinated with infantry to create layered defenses. They learned to exploit terrain, using hedgerows, villages, and natural obstacles to channel enemy armor into kill zones. Even in situations where the gun could not penetrate heavier German tanks, these tactics slowed advances, inflicted damage, and forced tactical adjustments. This combination of skill, bravery, and resourcefulness exemplified the broader British approach to War World II, adapting under pressure, making the most of available resources, and using intellect and courage to counter superior technology. The gun's legacy extends beyond immediate battlefield success. Its effectiveness in the early stages of War World II allowed Britain to regroup, rearm, and develop more advanced anti-tank solutions. It demonstrated that even modest weapons, when combined with skillful crews and innovative tactics, could have a strategic impact disproportionate to their size. The lessons learned from its deployment informed doctrine, training, and weapons design, ensuring that future generations of British artillery and infantry will be better prepared for mechanized warfare. Culturally, the gun became a symbol of resilience and improvisation. It represented the ingenuity of a nation under threat, capable of producing effective solutions despite limited resources and overwhelming odds. The human stories associated with its deployment, acts of bravery, ingenuity, and determination, cemented its place in history. Veterans and historians alike recognize that its significance lies not only in technical specifications, but in the courage and creativity of those who operated it under extreme conditions. In theaters ranging from the French coastlines to North Africa, the stopgap gun proved time and again that even a small weapon could change the course of engagements. It delayed Blitzkrieg, protected retreating forces, and forced German commanders to rethink tactics. Its crews became legends, demonstrating that precision, courage, and ingenuity could turn the tide of battle. The gun exemplified the principle that the human element in warfare, the skill, creativity, and determination of soldiers, can transform even modest technology into a decisive instrument of war. By 1942, the stopgap gun had secured its place in military history. Its influence extended to the design of heavier anti-tank weapons, its operational lessons informed doctrine, and its symbolic impact inspired both soldiers and civilians. While newer weapons eventually replaced it, the story of its role in breaking the momentum of Blitzkrieg remains a testament to the interplay of technology, tactics, and human ingenuity. It reminds us that even in desperate circumstances, ingenuity, preparation, and courage can amplify the impact of the simplest tools. In the end, the gun that broke the Blitzkrieg was more than a weapon. It was a testament to Britain's ability to adapt, innovate, and resist against overwhelming odds. It proved that courage and skill could compensate for technological limitations, that preparation and improvisation could offset numerical inferiority, and that a modest weapon in the right hands could alter the course of history. Its story is one of resilience, ingenuity, and heroism, a stopgap solution that became a decisive factor in the early years of War World II, ensuring that Britain survived to fight another day. Its legacy continues to inspire historians, engineers, and military enthusiasts. The lessons of tactical innovation, adaptation under pressure, and the critical role of human skill resonate far beyond the early battlefields of War World II. From museums to documentaries, The story of the gun and its crews reminds us that determination, ingenuity, and courage can turn even the humblest weapon into a hero capable of shaping history.